Hello, thank you for joining me in my study. Last time we saw that Christ, in virtue of being our substitute and representative before God, bore the full brunt of God's wrath against sin and his judgment upon sin, and therefore bore the punishment for sin which we deserved, thereby freeing us from our liability to punishment. But was Christ's suffering truly sufficient to satisfy the demands of God's justice? Well, I think that the typical objections lodged by people like Socinus against the sufficiency of Christ's suffering were adequately answered by theologians like Francis Turretin. Turretin explained that in virtue of his deity, because he was God, the suffering of Christ takes on a wholly different dimension than human suffering does. On the cross, the second person of the Trinity, who had never known separation from his Father, experienced the withdrawal of God's presence, of the joy and fellowship and blessing and experience of God, and experienced forsakenness from God. The subjective experience of suffering that Christ thus endured in our place was equivalent to the suffering of any person in hell forever. And therefore it truly satisfies the demands of God's justice. Christ went through hell for us. That completes my defense of penal substitution. We have seen that penal substitution is a vital part of any biblically adequate theory of the atonement. But penal substitution is not the whole story. As I explained right at the beginning, the doctrine of the atonement is like a multifaceted jewel. And although penal substitution is, I think, the central facet of that jewel, which the others surround and support, nevertheless, there are other facets to the doctrine of the atonement besides penal substitution. And next week, I want to look at one of these with you.